Welcome to Voices of Auntie Rose, the channel where real-life stories of family, love, and heartbreak are shared in full, raw emotion. Have you ever loved someone so much, only to realize they don't see your sacrifice? Tonight's story is about exactly that. A mother, her pension, her daughter, and a moment that changed everything. If this story resonates with you, hit subscribe and press the bell icon to never miss a story that will touch your heart. Without further ado, Auntie Rose, please share your story with us.
Thank you so much, man. I was born in a quiet town in the United States. Life wasn't luxurious, but it was simple, honest, and safe. My parents were hardworking people. My father woke up before the sun, worked long hours, and returned home exhausted. My mother cooked, cleaned, and cared for us. I grew up watching them sacrifice their comfort for the family, and I thought, this is what it means to love. I married young, just 21, to Henry. He was kind, steady, and dependable. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Our first child, Emily, was born a year later. Holding her for the first time, I felt a wave of love that I hadn't known existed. I promised myself, silently, that I would do everything I could to give her a better life than I had. Those early years were filled with small, quiet routines. I'd wake up before sunrise, make breakfast, pack Emily's lunch, and ensure she had clean clothes and shoes. I worked part-time cleaning houses, while Henry worked full-time, and together we made ends meet. I often went without, skipping meals, wearing old clothes, for the sake of my daughter. Every penny I saved, every little sacrifice I made, felt like a deposit into a future I hoped would be brighter for her. Some nights I would sit by Emily's crib and just watch her breathe. I would trace her tiny hands with my fingers and whisper little prayers over her, hoping she would grow up kind and strong. I thought love could protect her from everything. I thought my presence, my sacrifices, my quiet dedication were enough. But life has a way of teaching lessons we aren't prepared for. Even in those quiet moments, I didn't realize that the world wasn't always fair, and that even those we love most can sometimes hurt us in ways we never imagine. Long pause. Soft sigh. I remember one winter morning, Emily had a small fever. I stayed up all night, holding her, feeling her tiny body shake. Henry worked extra hours to cover bills, leaving me alone with the responsibility of caring for her. I didn't complain. I didn't even let myself feel tired. I believed that being a mother meant always giving, always sacrificing, always being strong. As Emily grew, I noticed little things. She had a fiery personality even as a toddler. She would cry if she didn't get her way, argue with her father over small rules, or push boundaries just to see my reaction. And I would always try to meet her with patience. I told myself, this is just who she is. She's learning. I must be patient. When she started school, I would walk her there every morning, holding her hand, smiling at neighbors, pretending that everything was perfect. Inside, I carried the weight of countless little worries, the bills that never seemed to stop, the meals that had to stretch longer than I wanted, the clothes that were always a size too small. But none of that mattered as long as Emily felt loved, as long as she had me to rely on. There were days I felt invisible, days I thought, does she even notice how much I do? But I would push those thoughts aside. Love, I believed, was enough. I would sacrifice silently and hope it would be returned in some way when the time came. Those early years taught me patience, endurance, and quiet strength. I learned how to listen, how to protect, and how to give without expecting anything in return. I also learned the heavy weight of hope that my sacrifices would someday bloom into a life that Emily deserved. And yet, even in those early days, I never imagined the challenges that awaited me. I never imagined that the same hands I held so tenderly, the same little girl I protected and nurtured, might one day become the source of my deepest heartbreak. But for now, I focused on love, on giving, and on being the mother I believed I was meant to be. And in that quiet, ordinary life, I thought I had found purpose, peace, and meaning. Little did I know, the world had other plans. I never truly understood how fragile life could be until the day Henry passed away. He was my partner, my anchor, my quiet strength. He never raised his voice, never demanded attention, never asked for more than I could give. And yet, when he was gone, it felt as if the ground had vanished beneath me. That morning, the phone rang while the sun was still low in the sky. I answered, not fully awake, not imagining the words that would come. "Ma'am, your husband." And in that instant, my entire world collapsed. The funeral was quiet in a way I had never experienced. Friends and family came and went, offering words of comfort that I could barely hear. I remember looking around at the faces in the room, trying to anchor myself to reality, but everything felt surreal. I held Emily's hand tightly, and I could feel her tiny grip trembling. That evening, when the guests had left and the house fell into silence, I walked into the living room and sat down. I looked around at the empty chairs, the quiet rooms, and I felt a hollow ache in my chest. I realized that from this point forward, I was truly alone. Henry's laughter, his presence, the comfort of knowing he was there, it was all gone. My pension, which had always been a small but steady safety net, was now the only tangible piece of security left. The money I had contributed over decades, carefully saved, was now more important than ever. It wasn't about greed, it was about survival, about having something to hold on to in a world that suddenly seemed too vast and empty. Emily promised she would always be there for me. She hugged me tightly, promising she would help. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. After all, she was my daughter, the child I had sacrificed so much for, the one I had nurtured, loved, and protected. But grief has a way of distorting perception. We cling to promises and hope even when the shadows are creeping closer. I didn't realize it at the time, but the comfort I sought from Emily's words would soon begin to unravel. That first week after Henry's death, I found myself doing things I had never done alone, cooking full meals for myself, balancing bills, and making small decisions that used to be shared. The quietness of the house was suffocating. At night, I would wake up from dreams where Henry was still alive, still smiling at me from across the room, and I would reach out to an empty space. It was during one of those nights, while counting the bills for the month, that I realized just how vulnerable I had become. Emily was sleeping upstairs, and I didn't want to wake her, yet I felt a strange unease, a whisper of worry that something wasn't quite right. I shook it off, telling myself it was grief, it was fatigue, it was the new weight of responsibility pressing down on me. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted, a feeling I could not ignore. Looking back now, I see that day as the moment the world began to test me in ways I was not ready for. I had loved, sacrificed, and trusted. I had poured everything into my family. And yet, the very things I held most dear, the people I believed would never hurt me, would soon challenge the limits of my endurance. I remember sitting in Henry's favorite chair, holding one of his old shirts, the scent faint but comforting, and whispering to myself, I have to find a way. I have to keep going. And that was the moment I understood that survival wasn't just about money or food. It was about protecting my dignity, my heart, and most importantly, the fragile trust I still had in those I loved. I thought after Henry passed, Emily and I would draw closer. I thought our shared grief would strengthen our bond. But life, as I was learning, doesn't always follow the path we expect. It started subtly at first. I noticed small withdrawals from my bank account. Nothing huge, just amounts that I assumed were for necessities. At first, I told myself, she must need it for groceries or gas or school supplies, and I trusted her. I wanted to trust her. She was my daughter, after all. But the withdrawals kept happening, growing more frequent. My pension, my lifetime of work, the thing I had relied on to feel secure, was slowly being spent, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to confront her and cause a fight. I loved her too much to do that. Then came the day I opened the fridge. I had gone out for a quick walk, thinking about bills, thinking about how to stretch my resources. When I returned, Emily screamed. Not at me, not at anything in particular, but at the state of the fridge. There was almost nothing inside. And in that moment, I realized I had been living in quiet denial. I had been sacrificing, skipping meals, going without so she could have more. And yet, she had no understanding, no gratitude. I wanted to cry, but I held it in. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. I felt something I hadn't felt before. Betrayal. Not from strangers, not from acquaintances, but from my own child, the one I had poured everything into. I remember sitting down at the kitchen table, my hands gripping the edge so tightly my knuckles turned white. I looked at her, expecting shame, remorse, or even just recognition, but she didn't notice. She was focused on herself, on her own needs, completely unaware of the weight of what she had done. And I felt a strange mixture of anger and sorrow. Anger at the injustice, sorrow for the loss of innocence in our relationship. I realized that love alone was not enough to protect me. I had to protect myself, too. That night, I lay awake in Henry's old side of the bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought about every sacrifice I had made, every sleepless night, every meal I skipped, every penny I had saved. I wondered if she even remembered, if she even cared. I didn't want to confront her immediately. I didn't want to let anger cloud my judgment, but I began making quiet changes, small steps to safeguard what I had. I started keeping track of my pension more closely. I began noticing things I had overlooked, small patterns that told a story I didn't want to hear, but needed to see. And the worst part was that I had to accept that the person I loved most in this world could hurt me, that the one who had once looked to me for protection could now become a source of fear. I learned that trust, once given freely, can be fragile. I learned that love can blind us to the truth. And I realized I had to find strength inside myself, strength I hadn't known I possessed. That was the moment I understood that my life had changed forever. I could no longer live in quiet sacrifice alone. I had to act. I had to protect not just my money, but my dignity, my heart, and my peace. And from that night onward, I began the slow, quiet journey of reclaiming my life. After that night with the fridge, everything changed, but I didn't speak a word. I didn't want to fight with Emily. I didn't want to make her feel guilty, because deep down, I still loved her more than anything. But at the same time, the silence in my house became heavier than ever. I would sit in the living room, staring at the muted television, pretending to watch, but my mind was somewhere else. Thoughts of betrayal, hurt, and sorrow swirled inside me, and I felt trapped. I felt invisible, as if my pain didn't matter. Nights were the hardest. I would lie in bed, listening to the quiet creaks of the house, thinking about all the sacrifices I had made. Every meal I skipped, every extra hour I worked, every sleepless night. It was as if they had never existed. And in the stillness, a deep shame settled in my chest. I didn't speak to friends or family about what was happening. I couldn't. Pride and fear kept me silent. I worried that if I spoke, it would shatter the image of the perfect mother, the one everyone thought had it all together. And so I suffered quietly, carrying the weight alone. I began noticing how small gestures from Emily hurt more than words ever could. A dismissive look, a sarcastic comment, a question asked in irritation. All of it felt amplified. Every time she ignored my feelings or my efforts, the shame deepened. And yet, I still couldn't bring myself to confront her directly. During the day, I would walk around the house, checking bills, counting coins, and silently asking myself, how did I get here? How did my life turn into this? It was exhausting. Not the physical work, but the emotional toll of pretending that everything was normal. I remember one evening, I sat at the kitchen table looking at the empty chair where Henry used to sit. I traced the edge with my finger and whispered to myself, I am alone now. I must be strong. And though I said it, my heart ached with loneliness and grief. I began writing in a journal, notes to myself, thoughts I couldn't say out loud. I wrote about love, sacrifice, and the emptiness I felt. Writing became my only way to release the tension inside me, to feel some form of control over my life. But even in writing, I could not escape the sense of betrayal. Emily's actions, though small at first, had chipped away at my trust, and I realized, painfully, that love without boundaries can sometimes leave you vulnerable in ways you never imagined. And yet, amidst the shame and silence, I found a flicker of determination. I realized that the only way to survive this heartache was to acknowledge it, face it, and slowly reclaim my sense of self. I made a quiet promise to myself that night. I would no longer allow my love and sacrifices to be taken for granted. I would rebuild my boundaries. I would protect my heart. And though it would take time, I would rise from this silence and shame, stronger and wiser than before. That night, I went to bed exhausted, not from physical labor, but from the emotional weight I carried. I closed my eyes and for the first time in a long while, whispered, "Tomorrow, I begin again." I remember the morning I realized that something had to change. Pause. I had spent weeks feeling invisible, exhausted, and quietly betrayed. The weight of silence and shame had begun to crush me. I would wake up each day, perform my routines, and watch Emily go about her life without noticing the effort, the sacrifices, or the love I had poured into her. That morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table, counting the bills yet again, when my grandson came running in. He looked at me with wide, innocent eyes and asked, "Grandma, why don't you eat dinner like the rest of us?" Long pause, reflective tone. Those words struck me harder than anything Emily could have said. I remember the morning I realized that something had to change. Pause. I had spent weeks feeling invisible, exhausted, and quietly betrayed. The weight of silence and shame had begun to crush me. I would wake up each day, perform my routines, and watch Emily go about her life without noticing the effort, the sacrifices, or the love I had poured into her. That morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table, counting the bills yet again, when my grandson came running in. He looked at me with wide, innocent eyes and asked, "Grandma, why don't you eat dinner like the rest of us?" Long pause, reflective tone. Those words struck me harder than anything Emily could have said. I realized that my suffering, my silence, had been invisible even to those closest to me. And suddenly, a spark ignited inside, a spark of determination, of self-respect, of courage. Pause. Deep breath. That was the moment I decided I would no longer live only for others. I would protect my life, my dignity, and my savings. I began quietly reorganizing my finances, setting aside money that could not be touched without my permission. I made plans for meals, for bills, for the little things that kept me afloat. Pause. I didn't confront Emily immediately. I didn't raise my voice or cause a scene. Instead, I chose a different approach. Quiet control. I would no longer allow my love and sacrifices to be taken for granted. I would show her, without words at first, that I was capable, strong, and deserving of respect. Long pause, soft exhale. Days passed, and I noticed small changes. Emily would glance at me, perhaps sensing the shift. She didn't say much, but the dynamic had altered. I realized that standing up for myself didn't have to be loud or dramatic. It could be quiet, steady, and firm. I also began to reconnect with my own needs. I started taking small walks in the morning, enjoying the crisp air and quiet streets. I read books that I had neglected for years. I even allowed myself moments of laughter and joy that I hadn't felt in a long time. Pause, reflective tone. But the most important change wasn't about money or routines. It was about mindset. I stopped believing that my worth depended solely on what I gave to others. I began to understand that loving someone didn't mean losing yourself, that protecting your heart didn't make you unkind or selfish. Long pause, soft sigh. One evening, I sat in Henry's chair, the one he always loved. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in months. I whispered to myself, "I am still here. I am still strong. I will survive and I will thrive." And for the first time in a long while, I truly believed it. Pause, gentle reflection. That turning point didn't solve everything overnight. There were still difficult days, moments of doubt, and the occasional pang of loneliness. But I had found something more powerful than fear or shame. I had found myself. And from that moment on, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with courage, dignity, and the quiet strength of a woman who refused to be invisible. Sitting quietly in my living room, I often reflect on everything that has happened. The love, the loss, the betrayal, and the reclamation of my own strength. It's strange how life teaches its lessons, sometimes gently, sometimes painfully. I spent decades loving, sacrificing, giving without question, and I thought that love alone was enough. But I learned that love without boundaries can leave you vulnerable to heartbreak. I realized that grief is not just sorrow, it's a teacher. It shows us who we truly are, what we can endure, and how we can rise even when the weight of the world seems unbearable. Losing Henry, facing betrayal from Emily, and navigating those dark, silent days taught me resilience I didn't know existed within me. One of the most important lessons I learned is that self-respect is not selfish. For years, I believed that giving everything, doing everything for everyone else was the highest form of love. I was wrong. True love includes care for yourself. Protecting your heart, your dignity, and your boundaries does not make you unkind, it makes you whole. Another lesson was about observation. Sometimes the people we trust most can surprise us in ways that hurt, but by paying attention, quietly noticing patterns, and trusting our intuition, we can protect ourselves without causing harm. I learned that strength often comes in quiet, deliberate actions rather than loud confrontations. I also learned forgiveness, not for others, but for myself. For years, I blamed myself for trusting too much, for giving too much, for loving without limits. But I realized that love is never wrong. It's how we allow others to treat us that requires careful reflection. I forgave myself for past mistakes and chose to move forward with wisdom. One evening, as I sat watching the sunset, Emily came to me. She was quiet, thoughtful, and a little hesitant. She didn't need to explain or apologize yet. I could see that she understood. The acknowledgement in her eyes was enough. I realized then that love can heal, but respect is the bridge that truly connects hearts. Life has a rhythm. Some days are heavy with sorrow, some with joy, and some with quiet revelation. I have learned to embrace each day with awareness, to cherish moments of peace, and to protect my heart with vigilance. I have learned that boundaries are not walls, they are bridges to understanding, communication, and stronger connections. And so I continue my journey with a newfound strength. I am no longer invisible. I am not simply a mother or a grandmother. I am Auntie Rose, a woman who has faced loss, betrayal, and silence, and has emerged with dignity, wisdom, and courage. My story is not just about pain or heartbreak. It's about endurance, transformation, and the quiet power of self-respect. And I hope, by sharing it, I can remind others that even in the darkest moments, there is light. Even when trust is broken, strength can be reclaimed. And even when love is tested, the human spirit can rise, resilient and unbroken. I've come to a place now where I finally understand who I am and who I can be. The years of love, loss, betrayal, and struggle have carved deep lessons into my heart. I have learned that life is not about being perfect, about giving endlessly, or about expecting fairness. Life is about resilience, about finding strength even when the world tests you beyond what seems possible. I sit in my favorite chair every morning, the sunlight spilling through the window, and I allow myself a moment of gratitude. Gratitude for surviving, for learning, for growing, and for discovering that peace is possible even after so much pain. I have also learned that love can transform. Not the kind of love that bends over backwards to satisfy everyone else, but the kind of love that includes respect, boundaries, and self-care. It's the love that empowers rather than diminishes, the love that strengthens rather than weakens. Sometimes I reflect on Emily. I see how her actions tested me, and I feel both sorrow and hope. Sorrow for the moments of betrayal that cut deeply, and hope because she has witnessed my strength, my dignity, and perhaps has learned the value of respect and care. There is a certain serenity in knowing that I no longer live for others alone. I live for myself too. I honor my heart, my choices, and the life I have built from the ashes of hardship. And in this, I feel a quiet pride. Every day, I remind myself, resilience is not loud. Courage is not always visible. True strength is often silent, patient, and unwavering. I have seen my own reflection in that mirror, and I finally see a woman who has endured, who has fought quietly, and who has emerged whole. If there is one thing I wish to share with anyone listening, it is this: protect your heart, honor your strength, and never be afraid to reclaim your dignity. The people who matter will respect it, and the ones who don't will teach you valuable lessons about life and boundaries. I also want to say to everyone listening, if my story has touched you, please subscribe to the channel for more stories like mine. Press the bell icon to never miss a story that inspires courage and resilience. I hope that through sharing my journey from love, sacrifice, grief, betrayal, and finally transformation, you can see that even in the darkest hours, there is light. Even when life feels overwhelming, there is always a path to peace, self-respect, and strength. I am Auntie Rose. My story is my truth, and I hope it helps you find your own strength.
Wow, what an incredible story from Auntie Rose. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, your struggles, and your triumphs with us today. Truly inspiring. To everyone watching and listening, if you found Auntie Rose's story moving, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and press the bell icon so you never miss another story that touches the heart and teaches life lessons. We would also love to hear from you. Leave a comment below, share your thoughts, ask Auntie Rose a question, or tell us what story you'd like to hear next. Your comments make this community stronger and help us bring more stories that truly matter. And trust me, you won't want to miss our upcoming episodes. Next week, we'll bring you more real-life stories of courage, resilience, and moments that will make you laugh, cry, and reflect on life. Stories from across the USA and beyond. So stay tuned, subscribe, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. From all of us here, thank you for listening. And a special thanks to Auntie Rose for sharing her story today. See you in the next episode.